Coming to you live from Manchester with everything moving in this transfer window right now. Multiple stories breaking at once, and one of them could completely change the shape of this squad. We're talking about the midfield pursuit again because there has been fresh movement in the last few hours. Stick with me because this one is bigger than it looks. There's also a striker conversation heating up on the other side of the pitch and a fullback name that keeps resurfacing every single day. And just before I came on, word landed that a championship club has made an approach for one of our fringe players. Could that mean extra funds for United to spend elsewhere? I'll get into that. But first, drop your thoughts in the chat right now because I want to know where you stand on all of this before we go any further. Are you buying the optimism, or has this window burned you too many times already? Because honestly, some of you in the comments last week were convinced none of this would even reach this stage, and yet here we are, still talking about it, still watching it develop in real time day after day, so maybe it's worth keeping an open mind a little longer before writing anything off completely. One deal already looks close to fully wrapped up elsewhere in Europe, agreed personal terms, a long contract running into the next decade, and every last detail on salary reportedly settled. That tells you how quickly things can move once two sides actually want the same outcome, and it's worth remembering that as a benchmark for everything else we're about to discuss. Let's get into it properly. There's confusion swirling around 2 or 3 separate midfield profiles at once, so let me untangle it for you clearly because the headlines have blurred a lot of this together. One player has quietly been offered to the club, and that's a completely different situation to United actively going out and chasing someone themselves. Another name is genuinely under real consideration, with people at the club speaking directly to representatives, though nothing formal has landed with the selling club just yet, so don't treat that as a done deal. And a third player who was reportedly desperate to join 12 months ago is still sitting there quietly as an open door if the hierarchy decide to walk back through it before deadline day, so don't panic if the headlines feel contradictory today, because a lot of this is still fluid and could shift within hours depending on what the club decides they actually need most, and that's exactly why staying tuned matters, right? Now, because make sure you're subscribed to this channel before we carry on, that way you won't miss the moment any of these stories flip from rumor to confirmed. Right, back to it. This is where the real story sits, and it all comes down to one central figure who has completely dominated the conversation for weeks now. This morning we were discussing the growing belief inside the building that this deal, against the odds, could actually happen before the window closes. Since then, more layers have come out, and honestly, the picture gets murkier by the hour the deeper you dig into it. One reporter closely tied to the club is now suggesting the rival side are finally willing to engage in conversations about letting their star man leave. Right at the moment, they're also chasing a defensive midfielder of their own. That single detail changes everything because it directly clashes with the stated plan of protecting the budget while there's still a wide forward and a new full-back left to sort. Are they really willing to blow the whole summer on one marquee name? Here's the thing, this could easily be the club quietly managing expectations while something totally different builds in the background. We've seen that trick before, haven't we? So don't take every line at face value just yet. The correspondents closest to the training ground tend to get fed the cautious version of events, the one where finances sound tight and priorities sound divided across 3 or 4 positions instead of one. Meanwhile, the reporters with looser ties to the club, the ones who break the biggest stories with almost no warning at all, are painting a completely different picture, one where the money is genuinely there and the hierarchy are fully prepared to structure a deal that gets it done properly. So who do you believe, the cautious insiders or the fearless outsiders? That contradiction alone tells you there's a real tug-of-war happening behind the scenes over whether this truly is the priority signing of the summer or just a nice story to keep fans dreaming. And it isn't just noise, because layered on top of it is a completely separate transfer saga at a rival club that could unlock the whole domino effect everyone's been waiting on. Their long-serving defensive midfielder is reportedly edging closer to a move away, with personal terms said to be advancing fast and transfer fee conversations now genuinely underway between both parties. That single departure could be the exact trigger that finally opens the door for our target to become realistically available, because someone in that engine room has to make space eventually. It's genuinely fascinating how one transfer happening in a completely different country can end up shaping everything unfolding here in Manchester this week. Financial fair play deadlines are also playing a part in the timing of all this, with new squad cost ratio rules kicking in soon and every club suddenly far more conscious of how contracts, fees, and agent payments get structured on paper. That alone explains a lot of the mixed messaging we're seeing right now, because clubs are learning to talk publicly in one register while operating privately in another. Now, some fans are asking whether the club even understands what kind of wages this level of player commands, and honestly, that's a fair question worth addressing properly. But from what's being reported, the current salary figure being floated is nowhere near as frightening as people assume, which makes the whole hesitation feel a little strange once you actually sit down and think it through. This is a proven winner we're discussing here, a player who has lifted major trophies at the highest level and still has his very best years sitting ahead of him. You don't treat a signing like that the same way you'd treat a squad filler picked up on modest, unremarkable terms just to bulk out numbers. If the ownership are genuinely serious about rebuilding real leadership through the spine of this team, then paying a fair, premium wage for a certified winner isn't some reckless risk. It's simply the standard cost of doing business again at the level this club claims it wants to return to. Picture this midfielder working alongside the experienced heads already inside that dressing room, feeding the creative players stationed just ahead of him, and suddenly this doesn't look like just another throwaway rumor anymore. It starts looking like an actual structural plan finally coming together after years of scattergun signings. That's exactly the kind of transfer this club used to specialize in, identifying the one missing piece and going out to get it decisively, without second-guessing themselves for months on end while rivals moved first. Obviously, the financial reality today is nothing like it used to be back then, and everyone watching this channel already knows that painfully well by now. We've made plenty of our own mess over the years through mismanagement, missed opportunities, and short-term thinking dressed up as strategy. So there will absolutely be caution here even if the deal itself is genuinely doable, and that caution might honestly be exactly what saves this window from turning into another expensive disaster we're still paying 4 years later. Meanwhile, over at the rival club chasing that departing midfielder, their own squad is already stacked with serious international quality sitting in that exact position, so don't be shocked at all if one or even two more players end up heading for the exit as a direct knock-on result of these incoming reinforcements arriving. Keep a close eye on that, because it could quietly open pathways for completely different transfers that nobody watching right now is even talking about just yet. Now let's talk about the fullback situation for a second, because this one has been quietly bubbling away underneath all the bigger headlines, and I think it deserves more attention than it's currently getting. Multiple names have been floated over the past fortnight, some realistic, some clearly just agents fishing for a better contract elsewhere, and separating the genuine targets from the noise is honestly half the job on a channel like this. One left-sided option has been strongly linked for well over a year now, and sources close to that situation suggest the interest has never actually gone away. It's simply been parked while other priorities took precedence in the boardroom. Could that conversation restart properly once the midfield business gets settled one way or the other? I think it's genuinely likely, because clubs rarely chase everything simultaneously unless the money is essentially unlimited, and we all know that isn't the reality here right now. There's also a domestic option who's been quietly excelling all season, the kind of player who doesn't dominate headlines but keeps popping up on recruitment shortlists whenever his name gets mentioned by people who actually watch football closely rather than just scroll transfer Twitter. Don't be shocked if that name suddenly accelerates. In the coming days, these things can move remarkably fast once a release clause becomes public knowledge. And here's something else worth mentioning, because it ties directly back into the budget conversation we had earlier. A couple of fringe players are attracting interest from clubs abroad, and any sale there effectively becomes free money toward whichever deal the club decides to prioritize first. Selling well funds buying well, it's really that simple, even if it rarely gets the same headline treatment as the glamour signings everyone actually wants to talk about. Let's jump back into the chat again for a moment, because there's a great question here about timing that I think deserves a proper answer rather than a quick dismissal. Someone's asking whether all of this could realistically still fall apart completely. And yes, absolutely it could. These deals collapse constantly right up until the very last moment, sometimes over something as small as a disagreement on agent fees or add-on clauses buried deep in the contract. I've watched deals that looked completely done unravel within 48 hours more times than I can count over the years covering this club, so treat everything you're hearing right now as likely rather than guaranteed. That said, the direction of travel does feel different this time. There's a genuine appetite from ownership level downward to make a statement signing rather than another cautious, budget-conscious addition that fans forget about within a season. There's also growing chatter circulating that a marquee winger at that very same club may be edging toward the exit door too. And yes, before you say it, plenty of people laughed openly when that exact name was floated near Manchester a few weeks back. Laugh all you want, genuinely, but if a real Champions League contender can seriously make a move for a player of that calibre, then anyone competing at that level realistically has a shot too, and that includes clubs a lot closer to home than most people currently expect. So keep that one filed away quietly in the back of your mind, because I don't think we've heard the very last of it just yet. Let's get back into your reactions now, because the chat has been absolutely buzzing since the moment we started this stream. Someone raises a genuinely fair point, asking whether the recruitment team could really be unaware of what a marquee target actually earns before formally entering talks with his club and representatives. Good observation, and honestly the answer is almost certainly no. They know exactly what's being asked for behind the scenes. These kinds of conversations simply don't happen blind at this level of football anymore. When you're targeting a proven winner in the absolute prime of his career, you build the numbers around actually getting the Deal done properly, not around quietly discouraging yourself from doing it at the final hurdle. That's always been the real difference between clubs who compete seriously for trophies and clubs who just talk endlessly about competing for them without ever backing it up. Another comment coming through right now asks a really sharp question, whether the manager himself has actually pushed for this specific profile of midfielder, or whether this is purely a recruitment department decision being made above his head without much input. From everything I've picked up, it sounds like a genuinely shared vision between the dugout and the boardroom for once, which honestly makes a refreshing change after years of reported friction between different departments pulling in completely different directions. When manager and recruitment actually agree on a target, deals tend to move faster and survive setbacks far better than when there's internal disagreement bubbling under the surface the whole time. Someone else in the chat is asking about the timeline, wanting to know roughly when we might expect actual clarity rather than daily fragments of information dripping out one outlet at a time. Realistically, I think we're looking at a proper update within the next week or so, possibly sooner if the rival club's own midfield departure accelerates as quickly as some reporters are currently suggesting behind the scenes. Keep refreshing, keep checking back here daily, because I promise you the moment anything concrete lands, you will hear about it from me first before anywhere else picks it up properly. And one more thing before we wrap up this segment, a few of you have asked whether this pursuit could actually damage relations with the selling club if talks drag on publicly without any real progress being made behind closed doors. It's a fair concern. Clubs do remember how they're treated during protracted negotiations, and burning bridges unnecessarily rarely helps anyone long-term, especially if you might need to do business with that same club again down the line for a completely different player. Let me know down below who you'd genuinely rather see arrive first, the marquee midfielder everyone keeps talking about, or the new forward option that's been quietly discussed alongside all of this the past few days, because both conversations are running in parallel right now and both could realistically land before this window slams shut for good. As always, get properly involved in the comments section below. Tell me your honest read on exactly where you think this whole saga is heading next. Hit that like button if you want more of these daily breakdowns delivered straight to you. Turn on notifications so you genuinely never miss an update the moment it actually drops. And I'll see you all back here again tomorrow with whatever develops further overnight while we're all asleep. One last thing before I let you go, because it genuinely matters more than people give it credit for. None of these stories exist in isolation anymore. Every single transfer across the top 5 leagues right now seems to be quietly connected to at least one other deal happening somewhere else entirely. I'd genuinely rather give you the messy, complicated, contradictory version of events as it actually unfolds than pretend everything is neat and confirmed when it clearly isn't yet behind the scenes. So thank you for trusting this channel with your time today. That really does mean a lot to me personally, and if you've made it this far without subscribing yet, now's honestly the perfect moment to fix that before you close this tab and move on with your day. Thanks so much for sticking around and watching all the way through today, and stay tuned, because this transfer window is honestly only just getting started, and I don't think anyone watching this is ready for how quickly it's about to accelerate. From here,